happy to have you here, Nubia, because I really, request your presence, because I think that, of course, you are a designer. You have a lot to say regarding communication, branding, but also design process and creativity. But also your work talks a lot, because they talk about social teams. They're talking about our context. They give you your personal point of view, of course, from you and your collective. So that's why for young designers, having a particular mindset, a point of view, and a particular process, it's really fundamental in any kind of discipline, but also have a particular attitude when you are working with a client. Of course, for your personal project, we can experiment a little bit more, but even find some kind of modality with big clients, we will see example and so on, with really refresh your way of working even with the duties of our everyday life. So, of course, Nubia, as you know, she's the owner of a Nubikini studio that is based in Bogotá and is a collective of creative minds, we can say. She does super bold brand identity, lettering. She's an expert, of course, in typography. You're a typography lover. Super bold and cool color, and shape shifter, because you work a lot also with shape and transformation of shape, something that is really strong in your work. Of course, together with expression is storytelling. And I really love that you mix a lot, your work, your craft with a lot of spontaneity. Okay, so you try to experiment and pass your word every time that you are doing something. So, Nubia, okay.
Thank you for that introduction. I mean, I don't have to say anything right now.
No, okay, I know you, but we can say that it's something that is really, evident from what you are doing. So you are the example of a designer that really, make, transparent also the mindset by the work. So that's why I think that for our students, it's really super interesting having this talk together with you. So I'll let you the stage so you can open your presentation. You can start and explain better than me who you are and what you're doing. See you at the end. I will have some questions for you. And also, of course, to our student for the chat, feel free to ask. Okay?
Cool. So I will share. Just let me know if you're able to see.
Yes.
Cool. So, well, actually, with that introduction, I think I won't say anything after that, but I will try to be as short as I can. But I'm a really talkative person, so if I'm passing the time that I should, just let me know and we start talking about any specific question that the audience might have.
Okay.
But first of all, and before starting, I want to thank you. I want to thank the Domus Academy team for inviting me. I know that we have been sharing emails for a long time, and right now I feel glad that we finally did it. And I'm so glad to be part of this powerful and meaningful moment for everyone that is studying, that is learning. And today, I hope that the bar is low because I didn't bring any answer. I just brought more questions. And yeah, that is what is basically I have been asking myself lately, and that is what if. I don't know if you know my work or have seen, I'm talking to the audience specifically, but my name is Nubia, Nubia Navarro. I'm also known as Nubikini. I'm a graphic designer. By profession, I love color and typography. That's more by passion. I was born in Venezuela, but I have lived in Bogotá, Colombia for 10 years or so. I consider myself a woman, queer, very gay, an immigrant, and someone who feels deeply. And I really, really hope that what I brought today might answer things or might make you ask yourself new things. For those who have seen my work, maybe you have noticed that I enjoy creating brands, illustrating, and occasionally posting things on social media. But well, enough about that. I think that I can talk more about how I do it and not show what I do. And today I'm here to prove you that there are many ways of creating personal and commercial projects from things that you love. But let's start with a polemic topic right now that generates fear, debate, conversation, and those are the tools. Some people say phrases like it's not the tool, it's the eye, and blah, 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 to refer to the fact that tools don't make the designer. But believe me, I think that they drive us to do a lot of things in the design world and also in the artistic world. And all started with the desire to overcome my fear of new and unfamiliar tools, that sometimes I was worried about someone is using a new tool and I don't know how to use it. Maybe that person is gonna take more work than I do, so I need to be updated like in the use of the tools. But I was afraid because at the same time there were a lot of tools, and right now there are a lot of tools that are emerging. So the fear, it's real. And I was feeling that I wasn't innovating, not technically or conceptually with the things that I was doing, even though people might think the opposite. But I was thinking that. And I didn't mean to master a new tool. I just wanted to give a little try and start knowing a little bit of everything. You know what they say too. If you know a little bit of everything, you don't know anything. But at this time of history, I think that this might change. And I don't consider myself a specialist on anything. Actually, I like to know a little bit of a lot of things. And that learning curve of knowing a new tool, it's sometimes the thing that kind of bring you back because you don't know where to start. But the good thing about new tools is that you can use them as a flashlight or as a playground and not a ruler. I'm going to get a little bit technical here. I promise it won't last long. It's just for context. Anyone who has opened Adobe Firefly has probably seen this screen, right? Text to image or expand image or generative fill or scene to image. Like, what the hell? What is that? And how I can use that on my work. And sometimes the exploration for the sake of exploring, it's good. But what happens when you have always this idea on your mind and wanted to bring it to life, but you don't know how or where to begin? So at that time, I started testing those things. I didn't know anything about AI. And I was like, okay, I will start with this clear mind and let me explore the tool. But when I was, my cats are trying to run. I don't know what's happening. They will start coming, so they'll feel like they are not part of the conversation. But yeah, coming back to the theme, I got a lot of information because I didn't want to start without know anything. But at the same time, AI started to gain popularity and everyone began saying how you should to do that or how you should write this or that or the prompts. And I was like, no, I don't want to know that information. And honestly, while some of it was helpful, I prefer to keep it simple. And I begin with what I had known and I had practiced the years previous. So you have probably seen many creative processes or frameworks, and you maybe have used some of them, like the double diamond or the agile model, or I don't know, the reverse perfect square. I don't know, everyone puts different names to that, but for me, it's the same thing. To me, they are kind of the same, just with different names. And it is based on how we as humans act. And they have, those processes have shown in a very simple way how we can think. And at the first moment, I tried to keep it simple. I decided to make a simple structure that would make me iterate and work on that. So a bit of structure never hurts the creative process. And that was very simple. I started to think on a concept or a behavior. Then that might take me to a specific idea. Then I would add the tool, whichever tool you love. At this time, I was using Adobe Firefly. And then with my intuition, which is something that AI doesn't tell you or teach you, or no one teach you that. That is something that you have to keep developing, and it's work with your gut and with what you think that works best, and understand what's happening in there. And after that, you get a result. You can keep iterating until you get something that might fit the idea. So you should direct the tool to do that. Remember that screen that I showed you some minutes ago? There was from text to image and blah, blah, blah. Well, I followed this path from text to image with Adobe Firefly, but with other tool. Well, that was Midjourney. I was like, I'm gonna versus and see what happens with each of these tools. And one thing about trying them is that the result doesn't look like what you expected at first, and that's okay. But sometimes the weird look that you get with your first images can be what define a next project that you can do. So it is important to document that and use it as a prime material to make other projects if that doesn't fit your expectations at the first moment, right? So I started experimenting with that. At some point, I just wanted to make a dog, but there were a lot of animals and new creatures that appeared in the road, and I was like, okay, this is interesting. And how if I do it in the reverse way? If I try to imitate these hairy textures with a tool that I already know how to use. So that started a new path to try. But as you can see, there were a lot of iterations until I landed to something that I like, and I put that into another AI to make it animated, to see how it can come to life. Sometimes you don't even need that clear goal at the first beginning. You just need to start exploring. And if you don't like what the outcome that you get in there, you can use, as I said, use that as a prime material to work on a tool that you already know how to use. Now, here's another example from render to video. I mentioned that I use another tool, which is Cinema 4D. I know basic things about Cinema 4D, but I just wanted to try how I could imitate that hair. So I created this path on Illustrator, then I took it to Cinema 4D, add hair in the simulation panel, and then I added color. And I was like, okay, this is very simple if I do it the opposite way. If I try to imitate things, but adding the things that I love, which I think that most of designers might love the ampersand, right? So I threw that on Adobe Firefly again. After I created something on Cinema 4D, I threw it to Firefly to see what happened. And look at this. I mean, it was weird at some point. It created new letters, but it was interesting to see how the simulations and the animations could work. So after iterating and giving instructions, I slowly was getting something that has shape. So what if displaying wasn't a waste of time, but a way of thinking, like creating new things after you give to the AI something. Now, another example from video to audio. What can happen if I take these hairy creatures or elements into Firefly to make them walk, to make them do something? So once I understood the logic of hair, I did again the exercise. So I just wanted to simulate hairs and imitate the texture that Firefly gave me, and I created other iterations. So now I could add a new story to this walker. So I could add music, I could add sound, I could make it dance or play around with it. But what happens with the sound? I didn't know how to make any sound. And I have a lot of friends that can help me, but I just wanted to see if I could do it myself. And I added sound with some new tool of Firefly that lets you add specific sounds that you can describe, such as breaking glass or a noisy city or white noise, etc. And I did it. So this walker started to walk on a city with some sounds, with some new movements, with dancing, and I was creating a simple story of a personal project. But what happens if now game it's the leading of the process? At this point, I was like, okay, I can create things. I'm pretty sure they are nice. And what can I do with them? What can I do with, how can I express things that can connect with people? Or question what really beauty means, or specific words like love, or I don't know, relationships, etc. So I started with beauty. And I made that one on Cinema 4D and added a few particles and stuff. And then I was like, okay, how can I make this turn into something different? And I used Adobe Firefly to do that. So as you can see, I recreated more hair, but putting from another material. And I was like, okay, this is interesting. And suddenly Adobe Firefly wrote and asked to create a collaboration. And I was like, oh my God. From that exercises that I shared, this brand approached it. And I had to put some rules because, I mean, as I said, experiment for the sake of experimentation. It's cool, but at some point you gotta know what you gotta get. So I proposed them that I could try a few different materials and understand the logic of them. So I proposed glass, clay, water, and fur again because I love fur. Where there is hair and fur, there is happiness. So I sketches a few like lettering proposals, and they love the first one. Basically, I created this one in Procreate, and then I pass it to Illustrator. So it was a mix of a lot of tools, and they decided to go with the first one. And I was like, okay, what can I do to cross again tools and not use just one, but experiment with all of them? And I created this final piece that they shared. For the ones that might be asking yourself about AI and how to use it, if you hate it or if you love it or whatever, there is a specific thing that I have been thinking about the use of it while I have been trying different tools or different approaches or processes. And that is that AI itself can generate good taste for you. The tools are available, but they don't replace your critical eye and discernment specifically in the aesthetic and sensibility that define a visual project. So that is something that depends on your gut and in your intuition, and also in what you want to communicate with that. And after that experimentation with AI, I will show you things that are not related to AI, but this is the story time of Las Vegas Sphere. I don't know if you have seen that project, or if you don't know Las Vegas Sphere, maybe you look for it, because sorry that there are some things in Spanish and English, but Spanish is my main language. About the Vegas Sphere, can you imagine what it feels like to see your work in the biggest screen in the world? Well, neither could I. And I got this message that changed completely my perspective. This is the biggest LED in the world. And it is so nice to see it in person that it makes you feel very small and happy to be alive, of seeing some wonder that size and so colorful and so cool. But enough about that. I will show you a little bit of that story. One day I got this email that it was from Hannah from H Plus, a representation agency. And she said that she couldn't explain anything in the email, but she wanted to ask me something directly. And I was like, okay, this is a scam. I won't say anything. This might be someone that I won a fortune and I need to reclaim and stuff like that. But actually, it was true. She told me she had received a proposal, and she told me that my work fitted for that proposal. And she asked me directly, would you like to work with the Sphere in Las Vegas? And I say, what? Are you kidding me? And then after that email, she told me, let's have a call with them to know the conditions and everything. But this is something that I need to show you. And they presented my own work as reference for the project. And at that moment, I was like, that never happens. Like, sometimes the clients bring references from other artists. And I was like, okay, cool. That gave me a confident boost that I needed. And it was a reminder of a responsibility that I was taking on. So I called some of my friends that work at Nubia Navarro Studio, which is Bonnie, David Bonilla, Cami, Camila, and the artist, because we always refer to the artist as the vision that I had for this, which at the first beginning was none. But at some point I was like, okay, I have this project. Are you able to do it with me? Because alone, this won't be possible. And the timeline seemed doable, but we quickly realized that the revisions and the challenge was very big, and we didn't know how to begin. So we defined a way forward based on sketches that I sent. The premise of them is to bring wonder to the world of the sphere. And I was like, okay, how I can bring wonder to the world in specific words or executions. They selected this sketch that speak about wonder, love, unity, and things that I think that the world might need at this moment. And at the same time, we were designing the characters and defining the style of each of them. I wanted to represent diversity, freshness, and each of them could have a a specific style. So we had a lot of discussions technically and in the artistic part. It was crucial that the dances looped because the sphere like starts and ends the same way. That was one of the asks. And something interesting about this is this, I don't know if you know that tool that is called Mixamo, that you can add dance to the character right after you create it. So you don't have to go through that tedious part. But then the most important part, that was the type, needed to be legible, needed to reflect a mood, needed to have texture, motion, and, well, bouncy effects and a lot of things that they asked to do. And for example, this wonder world should not be coded, etc. I need to take into consideration a lot of things. But working these new formats brought new challenges, of course. At first, we didn't know we had to use spherical camera so the things wouldn't get distorted. Perspective, proportions, everything changed in that specific structure. And as you can see, Cami was trying to explain us how that worked, but definitely we didn't know what we were getting into. At that point, we had to be extremely critical about what we were doing. And based on the loop thing and to create a storytelling, I think that we acted as the first time that we do something like that because it was that way. We had to make a lot of mistakes. So we shifted from the characters from a complete story from 4 scenes representing love, hope, unity, and at the end of those specific worlds, people would dance and represent them. But I think that I was so wrong at that time. We worked weekends together to bring this piece to life, and everything was fun at some point. But then we got this message. It is not what we expected. And I was like, okay, so what are you expecting? We were stuck. And we had invested months into this piece and out of nowhere didn't meet the expectations. So we had to kill several scenes because we knew that if we could focus our attention in just one scene that would say everything, we just didn't need to do more than that. And I almost gave up at that moment after I had a review call with them and they asked this question: do you want to come to see the piece of the spirit live? And I needed that confirmation that the effort could actually become real. And I told the team, and they were like, okay, let's put our energy on finalizing this and bring it to life. And this is us celebrating. Como la flor. Hoy, 24 de junio, nos aprobaron el video. Dios mío, Jesús, gracias. So then after that, we thought that everything was done, that we could send that. But in the technical side, everything was almost done. We had to compose and render, and we thought that it wasn't gonna take that long. But basically, we spent 2 days uploading the file because it was 70 gigas weight. But after that, look at this. In the end, it was all worth it. If you've never been to Las Vegas, it's a great time to do it. It's marvelous. It's crazy. And it's something massive that fills the world with wonder and with color. So basically, that was the sphere: color, typography, lettering, character design, texture, animation, music, anxiety, egos, discussions, but at the end, a nice project that I'm very proud of. One thing that this project taught me is that you don't need to feel ready to start something. You just have to go for it, even don't know how to do it. And no project, big or small, is free from these problems and these setbacks. We created this beautiful project that almost cost our friendship. Just kidding. But it was worth it at the end to bring this joy to the world and to bring this perspective of myself to the world. I had a great team. I had to mention that it couldn't be possible without them. And something that I gotta tell you today is that when you surround yourself with people who lift you up, nothing can go wrong. After seeing months of work finally like real, everything made sense. And it was also a privilege for me, but something that I need to sustain, because the sphere was the journey, but at the end, the result that the sphere brought for me, it's something that I gotta work on every day. And we should never normalize the amazing things that might happen when you decide things with passion and with love and with what you like. So yeah, basically that was very excited to do. Now I started asking myself after the sphere, what if branding, which I love, would change for me? Always branding looks the same. How can I communicate something new? And I invite you to scan this code, if you're able to do it, to understand what I'm talking about. Basically, I ask myself, what if a brand, it's not a fixed logo? And what if that can have personality, rather than what we always see, but movement, but new things added with new tools? And how can I use these tools in the creation of the personality, in the creation of the system? How can I add 3D, coding, illustration, etc.? And what if we didn't decide to control new systems or branding, but to discover new languages for brands and how they can communicate in different ways and integrate their communities? What happens if a brand breathes and shows breathing? Or what happens if a brand flourishes and shows a new way of behaving? And then I ask it, what happens if a brand is baked? I don't know if you have seen that in my social media, but I asked myself that because it was a pizza brand. And I was like, I need to bake the logo. Or what happens if a brand shows woven and shows tapestry and behaves in a specific way? What I'm referring to is how we can turn traditional branding into curious branding, something that part from closed manuals to living system, or control message to co-creation and integrate people, or something that is logocentric to something that can adapt through the time and through the formats. And what if I use these tools that I've been talking about, not to execute, but to think, and to help me thinking and give myself criteria to that thinking? Remember, the strategic value of the identity not simply lives in the execution, but in what can be done, what is chosen, how is selected, how is combined, how is filtered, and how those elements interact with each other. And what if what seemed to be a mistake in the exploration ends up being a visual language of a brand or a narrative of a brand. So I also asked myself if I could share all the experiments and things like that. And at some point I said, no, not everything is meant to be shared. Some things are part of our own personal exploration and discovery. But I read this quote from Rick Rubin. I don't know if you have seen that book, but it's interesting to read, The Creative Act. And that phrase says, if you have an idea you're excited about and you don't bring it to life, it's not uncommon for the idea to find its voice through another maker. This isn't because the other artist stole your idea, but because the idea's time has come. So, how can I be a channel for those ideas to see the light? How I started asking myself if the real tool was me. I was the tool that brings the idea to the world. And how can I use that tools and be the tool at the same time? I can push visual aesthetics, I can create animation, I can create systems and own new tools and connect the dots and create stories that are consistent and coherent over time, but are actually usable for the times that we're on. Because for me, passion, play, and creation aren't luxuries. They are necessities of the human being. And if you have seen this presentation, you might notice that I'm obsessed with creation. And I enjoy creation as a way of living my life. So the details, the perspective, and everything that is related to the use of the tool are equally important to understand how to learn things. But for me, the more you try, the less you know. And how good it is to not know about something. Because at these specific times, it's scary. And during joyful times, I like to enjoy, I like to create. But during tough times and scary times, I like to keep creating. And when I'm nostalgic, I like to write and I like to listen to music and blah, blah, blah. But creating for me is one of the most powerful things that we can do. It reveals who we are and it brings us closer to people, to others, and opens doors to new worlds. It makes us shape the reality that we live in, even though it is scary, and also the language that we use. And after these mentally exhausting projects or experimentation, I realized how that can affect our anxiety, the way we feel, about the tools. But what I think is your mind is your most powerful tool, and you have to take care of it, because otherwise you won't be able to create anything, none for you and not for anyone. And yeah, basically you begin to understand what you're feeling and you can use it as the starting point of a new project. Lately, I've been very curious about how my brain and my mental health works. Upon confirming it's kind of healthy, I experimented with a few tools, generative tools, to create things on that. And as an anxious person, I started to shift the negative what if into a field of possibilities, what if. And yeah, basically, if we're not okay for ourselves, we are not okay to create for anyone. And as I mentioned, when I started this meeting, this conversation, fear these times is gaining field. And if design and art has taught me anything, is that the opposite of fear is it's not confidence, is trying. Is trying again and again. And the future for me is not to be feared, is to be created. Always starting with one question that can open and create new universes, and that is, what if? I saw this meme the other day that says, everyone has "I wonder what could happen if" thoughts, but toddlers actually do the shit. I respect that, and I actually respect that too. As I mentioned, my name is Nubikini. Well, Nubia, but sometimes Nubikini. Head of Nubikini Studio & Co. And this is what we do. Thank you.